Hey guys, just wanted to give you a quick video on my thoughts on the Deltapoint Pro from Leupold after 10,000-ish rounds. I'm not 1,000% sure on the round count because I'm terrible at keeping track of those things. But I've concealed carried this for probably over a year, and I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on it because there were some things that I thought about it that I hadn't seen anybody else mention, so I figured I'd go over it. So like I said, I've had about 10,000 rounds on it, and the number one question people tend to ask is it reliable? And I will say yes, but with a caveat. And that caveat is obviously that you do not drop it onto concrete upside down. And then the other caveat being that you have one of the newer models that does not have the old physical shake-awake sensor. So this optic is configured with shake awake, which most of you know what that is. That dot will kick on once motion is detected, and then after a few minutes of it having no motion, it turns off. So I had an earlier model that I probably put, I would say, 4,000 or 5,000 rounds on, and when I drew it out of the holster one day, the dot didn't kick on, and then I pressed the little button on top and it kicked on. After that, I sent it to Leupold, and it probably took about 4 to 5 weeks to come back, which kind of sucks if you paid $400 for an optic and then you send it in and they basically sits on a shelf for 4 weeks until they get to it and then send it back. So that kind of sucked. But got it back, and I have not had that issue since. And that issue happened to me a total of 2 times. But after the second time, that was enough for me to send it in because I didn't want to have to worry about my dot not kicking on when I had to put holes in someone. So that was my first reliability issue with it. I did send it in recently because of a different issue. Now, it didn't quit working on me when I needed it. What happened was I put the optic on after I had put a compensator on this guy, and after I put the compensator on, it shifted the 0 to the right. So I went to adjust the dot or the reticle to the right, and it wouldn't go past center. And at 25 yards, I was about an inch off, which for pistol ranges isn't a lot, but it still bothered me enough that like I should have a working optic that'll get my 0 wherever I want it. So I sent it into Leupold last probably 2 Fridays ago, and it only took about a week and a half for me to have it back in hand. So that was a lot better than last time I sent it in, which was 5 weeks. So when I got it back, I mounted it up and I adjusted it, and now I can get the dot a little bit past the right, which is good. But it still goes way further left than it does right. And I don't know what the deal is. My guess is that maybe when this optic or this slide got milled, that one of those screw holes is 1/1000th of an inch forward than one of the others, and I'm actually have a non-concentric mill, and I'm adjusting 0 for that, which, if that is the case, kind of sucks, but at least I, at least I can get it zeroed. So I don't know if that's Leupold's fault or if that's the fault of the gun, but they did replace the circuit board on it. So both times they replaced the circuit board when I sent it in. The first time was because of that shake awake issue, which they fixed. I don't know if I had mentioned this earlier, but it now has an electronic sensor instead of a physical sensor, from what I've been told. So those are the 2 times that I've sent the optic in, and those are the only quote-unquote reliability issues that I've had with it. Now, I'll kind of get into the minutia of what I think about it for concealed carry as far as its features. I won't go into all the features, but 2.5 MOA dot, You know, it has the shake awake built in, like I had talked about. Open emitter, and a big window. So, what do I think about it for concealed carry? Well, my biggest complaint about the Deltapoint Pro is that that open emitter, for whatever reason, is tucked way back in the optic. So why is that a problem? Well, if you conceal carry this and you have dust or dead skin cells or, you know, lint or whatever, when it gets on that emitter and then you go and you draw this in any sort of, I wouldn't even say low light environment, I would just say, you know, I don't know, like your bedroom, if it has just a ceiling fan in it, and you draw that pistol, that dot blooms a lot. And I would see people, like, the camera's not doing, and this has just been cleaned too, so you won't see any blooming around it. But if you go into some sort of dim room or, you know, just not bright, it takes up a big chunk of that window. I'm talking like you can see the corners, which if you're using occluded eye shooting does not matter, because you can see the target with your left eye, unless the optic is so bright that it kind of takes over. But to clean it, you can't like use a Q-tip or some fiber or microfiber cloth. You have to get some sort of compressed air to get the dust off of it, because you cannot physically reach it. Compared to something like a hollow sun, whatever series this is, the 407 or 507, that emitter, there is glass right at the front of it. You can barely see it right there. But you can use a Q-tip or whatever and clean it, and you're good to go. So I have the brightness all the way up on this one, because when you go out into sunlight, as you guys know, that'll get really small. And same goes to this one. I run the brightness kind of hot, and then when you're in a dim room, your whole window is taken up by a sea of red, and it's kind of annoying. I do not hear people talk about that issue as much. I've seen a couple people post about it online, and generally the response is, well, if you go outside, it's gonna, you know, it'll be fine. And it's like, well, that only works if I have to shoot somebody outside. What if I shoot somebody in my home, and I've got enough light that I don't need to use a weapon-mounted light, and I can shoot them then and there, but now my optic's a sea of red and you can't see. So that part really bothers me about the optic, you know, more so than anything else. A couple other weird quirks about it. It's a tall optic, like as far as the bottom window. If you can look here, that is a tall front sight. I'm not sure how tall that is, but that's a tall boy. And if you look through here, I barely am able to co-witness that thing. So much so that these sights are barely usable. And I had an M&P that was milled for the Deltapoint Pro, and I had a hard time finding a front sight and a rear sight that were tall enough to co-witness. And I think I ended up just saying screw it and not putting backup sights on that gun, just because I had a hard time finding them. But if you're running a Glock or some mainstream pistol, you should be able to find something, but you might have to do some digging. Presentation wasn't nearly as much of an issue. Some people complain about how it's taller and that you have to adjust for it. And I don't really have that issue because the window's so large. Other than that, the only other complaint that I kind of have, but it's a small one, this button to adjust your brightness. There's no buttons on this except for the one in the middle. So you have to press that button a bunch of times to get to the brightness level you want, and you'll cycle through all the brightness settings, and then you'll go back down to the lowest setting, and it'll flash to let you know you've reached the lowest, and it'll flash to let you know you've reached the highest. Which for me is not a big deal, because I don't adjust my settings throughout the day. Some people say they do, and they're like, oh, when it's sunny outside, I press the button up, and then when it gets dark, I press it down. And to that I say, do you really? Like, or do you forget all the time? It's it's just something that's kind of weird to keep track of. And if you forget, or you forget that you haven't done it or have done it, and you're like, wait a minute, did I do that? And now you don't know which brightness setting you are until you pull your gun out. And so I set it and forget it, so that button's not much of an issue for me. It's just kind of annoying to be able to cycle through the settings if you ever turn the optic off or whatever, and turn it back on and wondering which setting you are on. But other than that, I've been kind of, it sounds like I'm bashing this optic. I like it, but there's some definite things that I would suggest they change. So why would you want this for concealed carry with the RMR being as durable as they are, and the Holosuns being as durable and as inexpensive as they are? Like, you can get a pretty bomb-proof optic for like $200, and I saw an opportunity to buy one used for $150 the other day. So why would you pick this over some of the competition? The only reason is that big window. It is a super generous window that will aid in weird shooting positions, where if you're drawing and you're standing up straight, you're probably going to find your dot with your Holosun or RMR if you've done your dry practice and you've had your reps on it. But if you are laying down shooting underneath a car, or you're shooting one-handed, left-handed, you know, what have you, that optic is going to be super generous. And if you're off by a little bit, you're going to find that dot off in the corner, and you're going to be able to correct it and get it back to center. So that is its one redeeming quality, and that is the reason that I held out so long to get a Holosun. And then once the Holosun 509T comes out, that'll be what I buy and what I stick with because of that enclosed emitter. You never have to worry about dust. And I'm an electrician, so I'm often in dusty environments, and that happens all the time. So I'd rather have something that's enclosed. Oh, one more thing I will mention about this emitter that I kind of forgot about. Alright, I just dumped some water on it. Let's see if the camera will pick this up. Nope. Well, that handled it a lot better. Last time I got water in this, it created like 50 little dots. And if you go watch Military Arms channel on why he thinks the Deltapoint Pro is a bad pick for the Army, you'll note that he says he gets water in there, and then the dot turns into a million pieces. I've had that happen on this optic, and I've had it happen on an RMR. However, I will say this one was far worse than the RMR. Water getting in it is kind of a problem. But apparently not now. Maybe they did something with the emitter after I sent it in and got it back. But that is one thing that I noticed. So, would I recommend it? I don't know. If you're new and your presentation isn't all that great, maybe, but that can be worked through. So I do like shooting the optic, and if you're outdoors or doing, especially if you're doing competition, it's a great optic for that. But if you're looking to conceal carry, I don't know, I might go with the Holosun. My friends are going to make fun of me because I've been sticking with the Deltapoint Pro for quite a while. So anyway, if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can answer them the best I can. I've had quite a few rounds on this guy. So take care, guys.